GCM with first blood again, my man. All right. And good morning. Good morning. Welcome back, brother. How you been?
I've been.
Have you now?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
It's good to have you back with us.
Yeah, I came, I saw, I've been.
And unfortunately, it's this is the only day I've got Cameron for the show this week. He's a busy boy lately. Which, hey, good stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing a shoot in Jacksonville.
Do the do and make the dough. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. There's something nice that's like, oh, no, man, my job, one of my gigs, good Lord, has got me working on the beach the next few days. Oh, no.
And, of course, you're going to set aside 10% for the big guy, right?
But I don't know Joe Biden.
Never met
I
him.
certainly wouldn't let him near my daughter in a shower at the same time, that's for sure.
Based on what?
Yeah.
So, as many of you have probably heard, Hunter Biden has is pleading guilty to several federal charges and getting no jail time.
I thought he was only going to plead guilty to like one or two charges and the rest of them were just going to go away.
Well, among the charges he's pleading guilty to are $1.2 million in federal income tax evasion and a federal weapons charge of possession by a person not legally allowed to possess a weapon. Now, the gun charge, there's a lot of argument going on. Oh, well, but he's a first-time offender, and these are misdemeanor tax crimes. Okay, 1.2 million? Please let me ask, if I was to just not give the government $1.2 million that it had determined I owed it under duress, I mean, does one suspect that I would get no jail time?
No, I mean, not at all. But no, I thought that the gun charge was just going away as part of this deal.
They're just gonna forgive the felony.
I mean, that's actually pretty common in plea deals where they say, okay, you're charged with 12 crimes. If you'll plead guilty to 2, we'll let the other 10 go. That's actually not terribly uncommon in plea deals.
Yeah, this is in no way a sweetheart deal for the big guy's boy.
I am not saying
which is in fact coming to light in the news right now precisely because we need a distraction.
Look,
Something needs to overcome the headline that Joe Biden quite obviously took at least $5, if not $10 million in direct bribes from foreign powers.
Look, let me be clear. Obviously, at least some large portion of the reason why Hunter Biden is getting this deal is because his name is Hunter Biden. Okay? Let's be clear. on that, but facts matter. And I thought the facts were he's basically only pleading guilty to white collar crimes and the rest of it's getting wiped out. That is what I thought happened. And just so that all the facts are on the table, when drugs are involved and you have no criminal history, most courts allow for a one-time only special diversion, something. Basically, the theory is if you're a drug addict and you engage in crime because you're a drug addict, you're not actually a criminal at heart, you're a drug addict at heart. So if we get rid of the drug addict part, you'll stop doing the criminal part. Whereas if we send you to prison for 5 years and give you a record you can't wipe clean, now you're on a criminal path for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I understand.
I'm not saying that that's anything about what happened with Hunter Biden. I'm just saying if we're gonna talk about all this, let's be correct. I'm pretty sure it's just white collar stuff he's pleading to, and when drugs are involved, these kind of plea deals do occasionally happen. Not normally at the federal level.
Right. Not normally when you're talking about a federal gun felony. And yeah, you're right. That is a mechanism that's commonly employed in the law. And I do want to point this out. That's a lot like saying, well, Your Honor, while we understand that he's culpable of the vehicular manslaughter, he was intoxicated at the time. The fact, Your Honor, is that he's not a criminal. He's a drunk. The fault, in fact, lies with the chemical and the chemical abuse, not with the person who made the decision to abuse the chemical.
Unless you're Ted Kennedy and you just don't get charged. You kill somebody from a DUI, you're not getting this kind of a deal. Like, that's not going to happen. Unless you're Ted Kennedy and you're just not going to get charged.
I mean, you got Ted Kennedy, and I'm not saying Hunter killed anybody, but I don't think it's a stretch to suspect that Hunter, like the Clintons and like Obama, could commit murder, and because of the position he holds, despite the absolute obviousness of his having committed the murder to everyone, he would be treated as if it had not occurred or as if no fault lay with him. I don't think that he's materially different from Teddy in that regard, in the probability of his capacity to abuse the position that he holds as the first kid. So we've got this article from Town Hall that does a pretty good job of summarizing the situation. Hunter Biden to plead guilty to multiple federal crimes with no jail time. And frankly, that headline, assuming it can be backed up by the facts, is extremely damning, especially at a time when we're watching Donald Trump get indicted for what is being called a crime, but is literally an action taken by every president that any living person can remember.
No, Chris, like, the majority of the indictment is the obstruction, which he appears to have fucking admitted to Brett Baer, by the way. Like, you don't have to commit a crime to defy a federal subpoena. Defying the federal subpoena can be a crime in and of itself.
Okay, we're talking about Hunter this morning, so I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of charging obstruction without an underlying crime. Because that's what you're describing there, is we can't charge you with an actual crime, so we're going to charge you with an obstruction charge. There's very little material difference there between that and a testimonial perjury trap where you back somebody into a corner and trick them into lying so that you can nail them, because you can't actually get them on anything they did because they didn't do anything. But what we've got in this article, Hunter Biden, son of President Joe Biden, has reportedly reached a plea deal with federal prosecutors that will keep the first kid from serving time and deal him little more than a slap on the wrist in the form of diversion programming and probation. According to the Washington Post, reporting on court papers filed Tuesday morning, Hunter Biden has reached a tentative agreement to plead guilty to 2 major tax crimes and admit to the facts of a gun charge under terms that would likely keep him out of jail. The facts of the gun charge, by the way, like I mentioned before, at the very base of them are he's not allowed to own a gun because of his drug problems, because of his addiction problems and his history of addiction and criminality, and did in fact possess a gun. The press is being surprisingly quiet on the whole they threw it in a trash can near a school thing. But, you know.
I'm just trying to understand how that gun got found in the trash can near the school.
If I understand correctly, what happened is the girlfriend made him throw the gun in the trash, and then when he went back to get it, it was gone, and so he reported it.
Okay.
And if that sounds hard to believe, that sounds like, okay, what dumbass is gonna lose a gun that he's not supposed to have and then call the cops? Then I would remind you that we're talking about Hunter Biden, who left the laptop full of all the evidence
I'd like
at a
to file
computer
a
repair store and then forgot it was there.
I'd like to file a complaint. My drug dealer sold me bullshit meth.
Remember a couple of years ago, there were a bunch of sheriff's departments around the country that ran these programs.
Oh, yeah,
hey,
we'll test your
fentanyl
drugs.
kills. Bring in your drugs and we'll test it for fentanyl. Free of charge. Hey, here's the sheriff's department. I got some meth here. I need to get tested for fentanyl. Hey, do you guys do drive-up service? I'm on house arrest. Can y'all just swing by the front porch?
There's part of me that's sad that this didn't go to any kind of trial, because the rumor was, do you know what Hunter's lawyers were going to argue if he was actually going to have to face for real big boy federal gun charges?
No. There was a violation of his Second Amendment.
Yeah, they were basically going to argue all gun laws are an infringement or a version thereof. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm on board with this.
Yeah, honestly, that may be the entire reason that Hunter's getting the slap on the wrist, because Joe, I'm going to take your AR-15s, Biden cannot have our lawyers arguing on behalf of the Second Amendment for his son. He cannot have that optics.
Actually, I don't. I have a very serious theory. It's two-pronged about why this is happening to Biden. One, so that your Facebook and your Twitter and all your other feeds can say, hey, no one is above the law. Hunter Biden cooperated and got a plea deal. Trump didn't cooperate, and now he's in deep shit. That's the first reason it happened. Yep. The second reason it happened is, do we think Joe Biden survives to the end of a second term? No, we don't. We need Joe Biden out of the way, preferably the sooner the better. And if we have to make Joe Biden go away, making him go away because of stuff associated with his son, at least in this instance, taints it. Like if Joe Biden ends up getting impeached, it doesn't have to do, it's not going to be Hunter's laptop per se. It's going to be like smoking gun evidence against Joe Biden. And it might have something to do related to the laptop, but they can't, if they're going to remove Joe Biden, they can't taint the removal process by dragging the family into it.
And it's just pure meme magic that the program that's keeping him out of prison is called diversion.
I know. Well, I mean, that's literally what these things are. I mean, Georgia has a program like this. It's literally called pretrial diversion. And do you know what it does? it diverts it from trial. Like
Yeah.
it's as Danny said that that's the whole diversion thing. It goes away if you behave. Basically, yes. And while you're on a pretrial diversion, you can actually still pay fines, even be incarcerated for lighter sentences, be remanded to mental institutions. You could be on probation for years. Like a pretrial diversion, they could still slap that wrist pretty hard, but it literally wipes out all record of it. In many cases, even the arrest, if you complete the pretrial diversion program. Basically, if you're ever in trouble and your lawyer comes to you and says, hey, there's a pretrial diversion, you should probably take the pretrial diversion, because if it doesn't go to trial, you can't get found guilty. Like that's just how that works.
You also can't be acquitted. But I want to go forward with the rest of this article too, because we've got, starting here. My son has done nothing wrong, President Joe Biden said of Hunter on May 5th, 2023, when asked about the federal probe of Hunter's actions. I trust him, the elder Biden continued. I have faith in him, and it impacts my presidency by making me feel proud of him. Okay, quite separately from the tax evasion, the drug use, and let me make sure that we're clear on this. As of May 5th, 2023, when Joe Biden said, my son has done nothing wrong, at the barest minimum, from the laptop, we've seen video of him using illicit drugs and engaging in sexual activity with prostitutes.
That might be
Right.
underage.
And now, there may be some question as to whether or not they were underage, but from the videos we've seen, there is no question that some of them were, in fact, prostitutes. Right? You see money change hands. He uses the language. There are text document records of him placing orders and saying things like no Chinese, no blacks, stuff like that in his placing an order for, hey, I need 3 dinner reservations. Right? So in the face of all that's irrefutable, not only have we seen the evidence from the laptop, but specifically on the drug claims, he wrote about that in detail in his autobiography, right? There's absolutely no doubt that Hunter Biden has had serious drug problems for a very, very long time, right? And despite that, here you've got Joe, my son has done nothing wrong, right? And then, I have faith in him, and it impacts my presidency by making me feel proud of him, which is a bizarre sentence, but it's one that came out of Biden. So I
So
guess
it's
there's
normal.
that.
I mean, this dude talked weird before his brain turned into Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And it's only, hey, look, pal, God save the queen.
That was fucking weird. Okay, so President Joe Biden has spent the better part of the last half century demanding that Americans pay higher taxes, their fair share, and more recently called for a significant increase in the number of IRS investigators, even as his own son, who has done nothing wrong, failed to pay a tax bill of more than $1 million. This president has also sought to make firearm laws more restrictive, even after his son, who the president says he trusts, lied on a federal background check form in order to illegally purchase a gun that was subsequently tossed in the trash. And yeah, so to see Joe, I got the assault rifle ban passed Biden, have his son out there committing federal gun felonies, and then the defense is all gun laws are criminal because the Second Amendment is absolute, which is the correct defense. But for that to be the defense of this president's son, they cannot have that. So the president has also sought to make firearm laws more restrictive. For his crimes, violations that Hunter Biden is apparently set to cop to, the first kid will do 0 jail time. He'll get a diversion program and some probation, a textbook slap on the wrist for crimes that, if committed by most other Americans, would earn more than diversion. Last summer, legal scholar Jonathan Turley wrote in a column that this sort of deal for Hunter Biden would amount to controlled demolition, the implosion of a scandal to limit any blast effect on nearby structures or individuals. Like those buildings dropped between other structures, it takes precision and, most importantly, cooperation to pull off, Turley explained. Specifically, this controlled demolition will require the perfect timing of the media, Democrat politicians, and most importantly, and absolutely this is most importantly, because you're talking about the entities colluding to contrive something very carefully designed to remove an important optics blur from the equation. The Justice Department. The Justice Department is involved, as no one should be surprised, in what appears to be a very, very careful and lenient sentencing of someone who has clearly committed the crimes that he's accused of. So clearly, in fact, that he does not even contest that. As Cameron pointed out a little while ago, part of this is about the optics of saying, look, we took it easy on Hunter because he cooperated, but Trump isn't cooperating. And you're right, Trump isn't cooperating, which is interesting. Let me run you back to the Rittenhouse case for just a minute, when Littlefinger got absolutely chewed apart by the judge when he tried to use Rittenhouse invoking the Fifth and refusing to answer probing, directed, baiting, incriminating questions based on his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself. Littlefinger tried to convince the jury that Rittenhouse's refusal to testify on certain matters was the same as admitting to his criminal culpability in those matters. And that is something that is absolutely intolerable under the law.
It's not the same thing. That is, bro, that is not even close to the same thing. Nobody's trying to force Donald Trump to violate his Fifth Amendment rights. Arguably, Donald Trump would be in less trouble if he would shut the fuck up and exercise his Fifth Amendment rights.
That is fair.
To compare these two things the same way is just not an accurate characterization. Nobody's tricking Donald Trump into doing anything. He said himself that this was his choice.
What about Fourth Amendment right? Persons, properties, and papers.
Well, now you switch it up. You said Fifth Amendment.
No, I'm not.
You said Fifth Amendment, and now, wait a minute. The Fifth Amendment doesn't apply, so let's switch to the Fourth.
The Fourth and the Fifth are intimately linked, because one's papers includes those communications, which themselves are necessarily containing of the same sort of information that is protected by your Fifth Amendment right to hold harmless anything that could be used against you in a court of law.
Okay, well, what about it?
So, okay. Hang on. Do you just want to talk about the Trump case this morning instead of this?
No, it's not that. It's just you keep saying things about it that aren't true.
I do not.
Okay. Well,
you insist on assuming the worst case scenario for Donald Trump instead of considering what the possible defense is.
It doesn't matter what his possible defense is outside of the courtroom in and of itself. All I could go on is what I see. And like you compared this to Kyle Rittenhouse's obvious Fifth Amendment violation. And that has not happened here. And I just stepped up and said, hey, that's not the same thing.
Okay. In the Trump case, what we're talking about, okay, so there's, Alex points out, which would be fine if the paperwork weren't considered government property. Now, it's interesting, Alex, that you use the word there, considered. You're right, that's an important piece of the equation, is that the paperwork is considered by someone to be government property, which is not necessarily the case. The Presidential Records Act for some time has basically allowed presidents to keep an almost unlimited access to documents relevant to their presidencies for things like, their own record keeping and the establishment of their presidential libraries. Those records traditionally have included many, many documents of at least the same level of classification as those involved in the Trump case. Now, the common understanding of those records for every other president has been that those are the president's personal records, which is distinct from the government property question. That's different from the case with Joe Biden having those documents. It's different from the case of Joe Biden having the classified documents or Hillary Clinton having the classified documents, because they were not, at the time that they acquired the classified documents, which they then kept unsecured, which is also an important distinction. They were not at the time the commander-in-chief with the unilateral authority to declassify those documents, or the Presidential Records Act protection of acquiring, retaining, and securing those documents as personal documents in posterity following the end of a presidency. So the idea of them being government property, that will absolutely be argued, and it may be that a clever attorney can argue that down, but the law will not be on his side with that. And the reason that matters is that that makes, this is my argument, that makes the subpoenas of those records without an underlying crime direct violations of his Fourth Amendment right to keep his documents safe and secure, persons, properties, and effects. And as the documents are subpoenaed in a matter of criminal allegation, I would argue that that's a violation of his Fifth Amendment right to be against being compelled to incriminate oneself. I think it's a pretty straight line argument. But you're right, Alex. This has not been tested, and so we do not know for sure. But those are the arguments that I expect to hear, certainly.
Well, to bring it back around, I don't think anybody disputes the fact that Hunter Biden got the sweetheart deal because he's the president's son.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. But that's 8:00, so I don't know what else we're going to talk about. I think we're done there. You got anything else?
No, I'm just gonna miss you guys. I miss fire whenever I have to take time off. I always miss Firearm Friday the most because it's Firearm Friday.
I'll try to do it justice without you, but you'll be missed, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Jesus, man.
Yeah, bald two-faced here. Justice is maddening. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Ever since part of my soul died the day Comey came out and said, "But Hillary didn't mean to do it."
Yeah.
So we're not going to charge her.
Yeah. At that point, at that point, when Comey chose not to charge Hillary, effectively rewriting the law.
Right. And there are some laws where intent has to be proven in order to prove that you committed the crime. But this was not one of them.
Yeah, but violation of Use 18 coverage of the proper control and handling and security of not just classified, not just highly classified, top secret, secure, compartmentalized information, but specifically tagged special access program information that deals with the movement of confidential agents, actors, capabilities, property, the stuff that is actually reasonably classified in order to protect the safety and security of our agents engaged in the functions of national security and the hunting of bad guys.
Yeah. Now, believe me, bro, I was there. I was there. I was listening to it on WSB. I was there. And ever since then, like, this doesn't even surprise me. With the thing with Hunter, I never thought Hunter would go to jail.
Right, of course. No, I don't think any intelligent person out there believes that any of these people, and hey, credit where it's due. In all fairness, it's likely that Donald Trump will not be convicted precisely because of where he sits in the hierarchy. I think it's not unreasonable to suspect that all of the legal jeopardy that's being swirled around him is essentially an ephemeral light show designed particularly to cause him harm in his election prospects. I suspect it will just, as soon as the election's over, whether he wins or loses all of the several cases that are being fabricated against him, I suspect they will all just evaporate because they'll no longer be useful. And some of those Democrats think they'll still be able to get some money from him. I think they've underestimated how vindictive he can be, which might work out good for us if he wins the 2024. Hey, you sons of bitches. Guess who's got the fire button now? So let's put a pin in it there. We love you, and I will see you tomorrow.